Welcome to the first Couch Time Conversations with the CRC for Water Sensitive Cities. My name is Mellissa Bradley. I'm the Regional Manager here in South Australia for the CRC for Water Sensitive Cities. And we've been working with the National Capacity Building Network, which is a collective of water sensitive urban design capacity building officers. And they've identified a need some year or so ago that they needed guidance in how to implement passively irrigated landscapes. So today I'm joined by Sally Boer, Director of E2 Design Lab, and Kim Markwell, their environmental scientist, and they're engaged by the CRC for Water Sensitive Cities to prepare a national guideline for passively irrigated systems. So today we're just going to have a bit of a chat about what's in the guideline, what's in it for you out there, and how you can apply them, and looking forward to some feedback from you in the future. Firstly, I just wanted to direct my question to you, Kim. In recent years, we've noticed a considerable uptake on the application of passively irrigated landscapes. What do you attribute that to?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I guess in my experience and understanding, across Australia, even though passively irrigated landscapes such as passively irrigated street trees are being delivered, there's been quite different drivers. So down in Victoria, canopy cover has been a key kind of driver, and making sure that their street trees are really resilient during times of drought or limited water supply. And I think South Australia has had a similar driver with canopy cover. Whereas up here in Queensland, I think it's been driven a little bit more by trying to get stormwater management as well as a key outcome in these systems.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kim. There has been a variety of key drivers, and certainly up here to date, one of the key drivers is, continuing to deliver stormwater management outcomes. And but it is starting to shift, and certainly with pressures being put on potable water, there's also that shift to looking at alternative water sources for irrigation. And using stormwater passively to irrigate landscapes is a way of achieving good outcomes for improved landscapes.
And I think the other thing that's started coming up as well in the last couple of years is the importance of urban cooling. And I think our experience in the past going through drought times has very much been about demand management, which is fine, and water efficiency, but that's kind of been led to, it's led to xeriscaping or low water use landscapes. But we know that the research coming out now is that not having that water in the landscape can actually have quite a detrimental outcome in terms of urban heat island. So I think that now as well, recognising that during those times of drought and trying to reduce our use of potable water, we still need to have that water in the landscape, and using stormwater passively is a way to kind of keep those soil moisture stores sitting there.
Absolutely, and I agree, in South Australia that has been a key driver. So back to the issue of stormwater management, what do we know about the benefits of passively irrigated systems for water quality?
I guess I like to take a step back, and it's how I try to explain even what I do to friends of mine. The natural landscape, when it was fully vegetated, we'd have rainfall, trees would intercept it, a lot of water would get taken up by the vegetation, we'd have water soaking into the ground, and we'd have a little bit running off. We then come in and we develop up our urban environments. We've got lots of hard surfaces everywhere. That rainfall will still fall, but now it's hitting roofs and going straight into drain pipes and out onto the roads, which will then drain straight into pipes that will go straight to our waterways. So all of a sudden we're kind of really disconnecting our landscape from the water supply, and that's had detrimental impacts on our waterways. And so taking it just back, what we're trying to do with passively irrigated systems is what we were always trying to do with water sensitive urban design, which is trying to build that connection back in between our urban water cycle and our urban natural environment. So passive irrigation really is just trying to make sure that we're directing those flows from our hard surfaces into our landscape, trying to protect downstream environments, but keep that water in our urban environment.
Sure.
And while we've been doing this with a lot of stormwater treatment systems such as fire retention systems and rain gardens, they're essentially passively watered landscapes. I guess the slight shift in focus in this guideline is looking at all other types of landscapes and really looking at what do we need to support that type of landscape that we're trying to achieve. So it's giving more consideration to soil volume and the soil moisture needs of that particular tree that you're trying to grow, or the landscape you're trying to achieve, or as the guideline also includes turf as well, and achieving appropriate soil moisture for healthy turf growth.
So here in South Australia, we have some healthy competition between the proponents of rain gardens and infiltration systems, which may be reflected in other states. Can you tell us a bit about the similarities and the differences between the two?
Yeah, I think to start with, it's just even taking it back. Sally kind of mentioned before that, you know, fire retention and wetlands and swales, or passively irrigated street trees or wicking zones, they're all technically passively irrigated landscapes. The reason that this guideline didn't incorporate rain gardens or bioretentions or wetlands or swales is because they're really well picked up in other technical guidelines across Australia. And so this was trying to kind of fill a gap, like you mentioned at the start, Mellissa. Mm-hmm. So they are all passively irrigated landscapes. And even in this guideline, I guess we're still putting forward solutions that are either taking water at the surface, like rain gardens typically would, all the way through to, you know, solutions where you might be delivering that water to the subsurface soils. So, yeah, there's definitely a range of options out there, which will kind of depend on where you're designing that system for.
And I think there's absolutely a role and place for a large variety of different passively irrigated systems, and it will really depend on your site conditions and your site constraints, as well as the key objectives that you're trying to achieve as to which approach is going to be best for your site. So this guideline, look, it was great to explore all the different approaches from around Australia that have been trialled and tested, and bring them together into one resource to help people sort of navigate through the different approaches and determine which one is going to be best for them for their project.
Yeah, that's good. Makes total sense. So we know that probably the primary target for these guidelines is councils and government who are doing sort of streetscape or large-scale infrastructure schemes. Are these guidelines something that the householder could adopt?
Oh, absolutely. The great thing about passive irrigation is that it's completely scalable. So there's approaches that can be done on the lot scale. And if you think about all that water that runs off a roof and runs down the driveway, it's essentially wasted water. Water is precious, and I think there's starting to be that shift that seeing stormwater as a valuable resource. And if we're directing it onto landscapes, even at the house lot scale, into your veggie gardens, into your lawns, then it's having greater benefits as well to our receiving environments by reducing stormwater volumes and pollutants that are getting discharged.
Absolutely. Increasingly, we're actually seeing community seeking out this kind of information, so that's really good to hear. Right.
Yeah, and it's going to be cooling their yards and keeping it greener during those dry periods as well.
And I think that we were hoping as well in writing this guideline that it wouldn't, it's not a technical design guideline necessarily, like ones that exist for bioretention or wetlands that are heavily used by engineers typically. We were hoping that people are they seem to be looking for passive irrigation solutions now to build resilience to the landscapes that are, being designed by landscape architects now, or, it might even be urban designers or planners that right up early in a project know that they want a really lush, resilient landscape, and understanding what they need to have in place to allow that to happen. So I guess we're hoping that this guideline could be used by quite a broad audience, which could definitely, get down to that household scale and maybe provide solutions like an innovation house or something like that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Innovation House 2.0, located up in Townsville, is a great example of lot scale application of passive irrigation. So that house incorporates a passively watered feature tree within a decking area, and it also incorporates a wicking lawn in the yard as well.
Wow. It's fantastic to hear that the community are adopting it to that level. And you've done a commercial project, a bit innovative around wicking lawns as well, I understand.
Yeah, look, back in 2014, a wicking turf open space area was constructed up in Gladstone at East Shores Parkland. And look, that was really the first kind of quite large scale application of turf wicking systems. And it's really surpassed our expectations as to how well it's done. That area of lawn is healthier and has a better colour and consistency than the other turf around the parkland. And it is sustained just by the stormwater that runs off a road through the parkland and the shade structures.
Brilliant. So I've noticed that at the rear of the guideline document, there's some tree pit sizing tables for 9 cities and regional centres across Australia. Can you tell us a bit about how they should be interpreted for different local site soil types?
Yes, so these sizing guides are really intended to make it easier for practitioners to both size tree pits but also make informed choices when they're designing these systems. And it acknowledges that there's different climatic zones, and so all of these sizing tables were informed by quite detailed soil moisture modelling to understand for any particular climatic zone how much water should be delivered to a passively irrigated landscape, making sure that they're not going to be too wet and oversaturated, but also making sure they're not going to be too dry and that they're actually getting the benefits from that stormwater. So the sizing tables are useful to be able to size, but also make those informed decisions. So you can see where on the soil moisture gradient a particular design might be. And if it's falling on the drier side, then you can make choices around more drought tolerant species, or if it's falling on the wetter side, picking species that will tolerate wet conditions, or looking at the catchment areas that are connected and tweaking your design in that way.
Yeah, I can absolutely see practitioners picking up and running with that, so that's great. So before we bring it to a close, are there any other features of the guideline that you think the practitioners out there listening today might really want to look into?
Look, one of the key, I think quite interesting things that came out of all that soil moisture modelling is that we modelled tropical, dry tropics, subtropical and temperate climatic zones. And there were design solutions that could work in all of those variety of climatic zones. So I think it's something that's worth investigation and understanding no matter where you're located.
And I guess for me, it was a really nice experience in pulling together the national guidelines because we had some really great input from groups across Australia, whether it was the regional managers through the CRC for water sensitive cities or the national capacity building group you mentioned, and also some local councils that are delivering some of these solutions on the ground. So it was nice to be able to see the range of different approaches that people are already taking. And there's a lot of these projects already in the ground that we can learn from. So it was nice to kind of pull all of that together and all the learnings from those different regions into one document, which will hopefully be of use to people. So it'd be nice to get some feedback on it too. But also thank you very much to all those people that have helped in developing the guideline.
Brilliant. Yeah, you've taken that peer-to-peer learning to this new level and consolidating it, so it's fantastic. All right, well, that brings to a close our first Couch Time conversations with the CRC. So Kim and Sally, thanks very much for being part of it, and we hope to see you at a Couch Time again soon.
Thanks.
Thanks very much.